Hi, everyone. This is our NCURA PEDC meeting today. I'm just going to kick us off with a few notes, and we're going to dive in. The National Council of University Research Administrators, Region 7 Professional Education and Development Committee is pleased to welcome you to today's presentation. The purpose of our PEDC is to support professional development activities for regional members, such as yourselves, and provide a broad range of educational services to ensure that all regional members have access to professional development programming. I am Catherine O'Hare, one of your PEDC chairs, with Tricia Callahan joining us today, and several of our committee members. So if you're on the committee, please wave to our group. We're excited to discuss telework and remote resources with you today. Please note, today's being recorded, as Tricia just said. This presentation will last 60 minutes. Whether you're using audio on your computer or phone, please be sure that you are muted during the presentation. If you have questions or comments, please utilize the chat feature. You can raise your hand, or because this is going to be an open discussion, unmute yourself and feel free to ask your questions out loud or answer if you want to be a part of the discussion. We'll be monitoring the chat box throughout the presentation, so no pressure to talk out loud if you don't want to. And as stated earlier, we are just excited to have this day with you, and hopefully things work out really well. There will be a survey at the end, so please complete that for any feedback or ideas for future sessions. Today came up as a hot topic request from someone in our region, and so we are very open to your and now it is my pleasure to introduce our presenters for the day. First, we have Ashley Stale. Did I say that right?
It's Staley.
Staley, okay, long A. She is our chair for our region. And Alexa Van Delsum, that is our volunteer Region 7. Sorry, Alexa. Here we go. Volunteer coordinator, Region 7. So when you're ready to volunteer for anything, she'll be a good go-to to help you find your place. I'll let them introduce themselves more. Ashley and Alexa. Oh, and last week they hosted an NCURA session, and so that's why there are resources today for continuing the discussion. Can you two say hey?
Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. As Kat mentioned, I'm Ashley Staley, and Alexa and I have done a number of these presentations on teleworking. Teleworking is not new to either one of our institutions, certainly not in the Office of Sponsored Programs. However, certainly seeing a different side of it now with the current climate and pandemic that we are experiencing, that we're all experiencing. So thank you for joining us today. Like Kat mentioned, just open communication. We want to have discussion. Alexa and I have attempted to focus in on the situation at hand right now. So if we get off base and start kind of doing our normal, hey, this is why your office should consider teleworking, excuse us. All right, I wanted to start out today with just talking about a little bit of what some surveys out there have said. So Gallup poll in 2016 said 43% of employees work remote in some capacity, which is a 4% increase from 2012. 54% of office workers stated they'd leave their job for one that offered flexibility. There was an APA article between 2005 and 2015. The number of employees telecommuting increased 115%. We put the status in here just to kind of mention, you know, teleworking is here to stay. And certainly in light with COVID-19, there's a bit of an expectation that this will continue. While employers are currently doing it because of the need, I think that this is sort of giving everybody an opportunity to test it out, if you would, to see how remote work can actually happen and happen successfully in a number of different areas. Audrey Foster did an informal res admin survey. She had 49 responses. 40 responders stated that they can work remote in some capacity, and that ranged from informal policies to formal policies. So Alexa and I will be talking a little bit about that today. Brian Miller did institutional benefit survey through NCURA Collaborate and had 102 responses there. 73.5% of respondents, institutions offered some sort of flexible work schedule. 49% offered remote work options. 20% of respondents don't have the option for flexible schedule, and it's important to them. And that being said, what's important to them, the flexible work arrangement, that survey stated that 80% of the respondents actually said that flexible work is important to them. So in light of our current situation, this is something that is ongoing and something that hopefully each of your institutions will consider maintaining as an option for your Office of Sponsored Programs or Office of Grants and Contracts. So we're going to do one little poll here with you guys. If you could, for those of you that are on the call, if you can answer, if I launched this correctly, did I? Basically looking to see who on the call is a supervisor and wants to know more about flexible work, who's a non-supervisor that is looking for justification, who's doing this for the first time because of the current outbreak, and then other. I'll give y'all just a few seconds to answer that. We're getting quite a few votes coming in. Wow, this is a pretty mixed group. Are you guys seeing the results as well? No? Okay, I'm seeing some heads shaking no. Okay, well, we had about 81% of you guys have voted. Keeps coming in. It looks like we have about 26% that are supervisors wanting to learn more about flexible work arrangements, 12% that are non-supervisors looking for justification, and 50% of the callers today are here because they're working remote for the first time. And the other 24% are others. So y'all are welcome to type into the group chat some of the other reasons that you guys are here, and maybe we can touch on some of those. Thank you all for doing that. All right. Alexa and I are going to go through and just kind of talk about our experiences at each of our institutions. So prior experience for CSU. Oops, sorry guys. We are definitely getting used to the poll feature in the Zoom platform, so sorry about that. So CSU has been doing this since 2019. We officially launched it in February of 2019. So about 14 months in, although we had some more non-formal going on for a few months prior to that. So all in all, have been doing this for about 1.5 years. Why did we do this? So flexible and part-time remote implemented because we had a couple of individuals that requested just some work-life balance type things, or there were different situations that were necessary to allow them to, they weren't maybe feeling well, but they wanted to work remote because they felt well enough to work. They just didn't want to expose the office, something that we can definitely understand right now. The other thing that we were facing was potentially losing one of our top talents due to her commute to work. So where Colorado State University is located in Fort Collins, the housing market can be quite expensive. And so we have employees in our office that are commuting up to 40 minutes a day. So that was another reason why we started looking into it, outside of just the normal trying to offer some benefits, some perks, some work-life balance to our entire staff. So what CSU offered in sponsored programs was to allow for teleworking up to 2 days per week. It's something that we are looking at potentially revisiting for an ongoing basis. Again, current things are a little different, but right now we're sitting at 2 days per week. We implemented this. We transitioned to a paperless office about a year and a half or two before we implemented teleworking. And without having a paperless electronic filing system, it would have been frankly impossible for us to be able to do what we can do now remotely and not have that need for going into the office. So once we had that in place and knew that we could move forward with teleworking, that was something that we formed a committee and then did. Our committee pulled in folks from human resources. It pulled in some of our electronic research administrator officer and getting that technical piece from our research services, our IT that supports the vice president for research and all of the units underneath. So we got their input on it as well. We also pulled in parking and transportation to look at what are some of the options that we would have there for different parking for our employees. Currently, CSU offers either 100% or you can do like a 10-pack of daily passes, but they also have like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or a Tuesday, Thursday. So we pulled that in as well to make sure that we were trying to align what we were offering with something that would also be a cost savings for our staff. So right now, normally, our office has about 35% of our staff that is utilizing teleworking on a weekly basis. You know, they do their 2 days, that sort of thing. I imagine that this might be a test for some others, and they might continue to do that. Maybe have this be an ongoing basis for them. So right now, like I said, we're about 35%. We did not make any changes. Our procedures are the same, whether they're a state employee or a non-state employee, being that we're a state institution. I know some will need to consider things like union employees versus non-union employees, so it's definitely a consideration. Our employees then go through, they read our agreement, they have a meeting with their supervisor to talk about what the expectations are. We have a self-checklist, which later in our presentation will show you a few of those screenshots. And then of course, Alexa and I both are more than willing to share. Alexa has their policy and agreement listed on our resources tab here. We don't have a direct link for CSU, but happy to share that with you guys as well. If you want to reach out to me via email, I can certainly get those out to you. Give this over to Alexa to talk about how CU Boulder implemented this.
Thanks, Ashley, and hi everyone. I haven't said hi yet. I see some familiar names on here, so it's great to see you. So I'll go briefly over CU Boulder's prior experience. We've had flexible work arrangements since 2014. And a variety of them. So we've had flex time, part-time remote, and full-time remote, as well as one part-time employee who does both remote and in-office work. And the reason we implemented was to really get at that work-life balance. Our director, that's one of her missions for our organization. We had a near collapse of our organization prior to her joining as our director, and so she's real focused on work-life balance. That's been a big part of it. We also went all electronic in 2014. We had lots of paper files before then, transitioned to an e-system soon after that, and implemented info in about, I think it was 2015. So what I already mentioned, what kind of flexible work we have. We implemented this pretty much for everybody all at once, provided the options that they have. We've done some updates since we implemented, including we're actually doing away with compressed work schedules. So we have had employees who work 9 days and then take the 10th day off, and we've had to do away with that. Mostly because it's important in our office to be able to offer the same options to everyone. And one of our teams, it's really hard for them to do the compressed work schedule. It's also really hard to track with HR and also schedules. And it just was one thing that we felt like could make our policy easier and better. We have a staff of about 60 employees in the Office of Contracts and Grants, and over half of them have a regular flexible schedule. So we have 27 who've been on a remote schedule. And again, this is under normal operations. We're actually all remote now and have been for 2 weeks. So under normal operations, we have 27 on a remote schedule, 2 on a compressed flex day, and then 3 uncompressed and remote combination. And then by August, we'll have those compressed schedules no longer available. And we often get questions about unionized staff, and our staff is not in a union, either exempt or non-exempt, and both our exempt and non-exempt employees can take advantage of the flexible work arrangement policy. So our next, actually, if you want to, yeah, great, advance that slide.
Alexa, a quick question came in. Since you all have talked about what you've implemented at your institutions, there was a question asking if either of you have had requests to help faculty who might be working remotely, particularly doing their lab work.
So this is, I have seen, can't remember now because I've been reading so much, whether it was on the res admin list or actually at our institution, but there's been questions about whether or not at least materials and supplies can be shipped to our researchers' home. And as I was talking about this with my supervisor, our deputy director, one thing that I mentioned was we have some researchers who are in the School of Education, so they don't have a lab, but they do research. And they are out of state, and they do get equipment shipped to them, such as iPads or computers, so they can do their research. So I know it's a possibility. It's a matter of navigating the policies at the university in order to get that the materials and supplies to them. As far as an actual lab, I would expect that would be nearly impossible because of EH&S and those requirements. But I think the social scientists may be able to set up more research activities in their house than the more scientific ones. Ashley, do you want to comment on that one?
I think you covered that great. I don't really have much to add to it. Thanks, Alexa.
Yeah. So yeah, that's going to be a tough one for those hard sciences labs for sure. So I'm going to go on and talk about the benefits of online work. And usually we talk about this as part of the way, to convince people that it's a great idea, because it is a great idea, but it can also be a good thing to talk about because it can help calm some fears about going all remote. So there's been actually quite a bit of research done about remote work, and our resource slides has the links to these, so you can see the details of these. One that I like to talk about is a Gallup research poll. They collected data around remote work, and I think it was actually this year. And they did this because a lot of federal agencies were removing the remote work option because they said there wasn't data out there. And Gallup said, actually, there's lots of data, and here it is. And generally what they found is that remote work not only improves outcomes and employee branding, but is a policy that the most talented employees desire. So their research found that there's lots of benefits to it. There's also a great 2-year study that Stanford did about this that talks about specifically the productivity boost and also cost savings of having remote work options. So very specifically, some of the options and benefits are that remote work is shown to boost productivity and engagement. I have heard one statistic that you actually get a full day extra work from people working remote because of the productivity increase. It also improves engagement with work. It attracts and retains top talent. So one of the reasons and actually she's online, I won't mention her name, but she's joining us today. One of the reasons we implemented full-time remote work was to keep 2 of our best employees because one moved out of state and one wanted to move to the mountains because of the housing market in Denver. We also implemented our part-time policy for one of my employees that I wanted to keep, and she was a new mom, and that gave her the flexibility to do both. There's real value in flexibility. So Ashley mentioned this before, but employees really value having that flexibility of being able to work from home. And as maybe you've been doing this now, you start to see the flexibility of being able to go do a few chores here and there, or check in with your kids, or run errands a little more flexibly than if you're in the office. The research also shows that remote flexible work arrangements increase happiness, satisfaction, health, and decrease stress. So there's research out there showing that people are actually healthier when they work remote than when they're in the office, especially right now because we're not sharing the virus with everybody. The flexible work arrangements, especially remote work, also saves money and is good for the environment. I've heard statistics that you get savings of $2,000 to $11,000 per employee per year. And some of that savings comes from office space. also from, I think, utilities, and even, I think, hiring and retaining top talent, because we all know that costs a lot of money and time. This is also showing from research that it's the future of our work. We just keep seeing an increase more and more in people working online. I have seen by going to NCURA that more and more offices of sponsored projects are offering the option of full-time remote. So we're now competing nationally with each other for our employees. They don't have to move anymore. They can work remotely from anywhere. So we're gonna start seeing that, I think, more and more with a number of OSPs. And then there's a real benefit of showing trust to our employees. So by having a remote work schedule, you really show your employees that you trust them. One of the questions we often get is, how do I know my employees doing their work when I can't see them? And my answer back is always, how do you know that they're doing their work when they're in the office? It's really no different. And especially, I think, in our offices, we have a constant feedback loop as far as work being done. If our faculty aren't being responded to, we hear within hours sometimes, especially within a day. So the constant feedback loop as far as whether or not people are getting their work completed. And then one other benefit that we've added since this whole COVID-19 thing is the ability to really respond to emergencies. So our Office of Contracts and Grants, because we had our infrastructure set up, and I think just about everyone had experience working from home, we went from Wednesday 2 weeks ago to Thursday, everyone working remote overnight with a real smooth transition. We've heard feedback from campus that it was seamless. Our faculty and researchers were supported without any break in services. It's not the only time we've had that. We had a major flood back in 2013, and same thing. We had remote work capability, and we were able to keep, must have been after 15, remote work capability, and everyone was able to continue the work as needed. Even though our campus was closed and sponsors generally respond to that well, we had a few things that had to get done regardless of the flood in order to get funding in, and we were able to do that as well. So lots of benefits to having flexible work arrangements. And again, our resource slide has the research done on this, so you can look at those and the data on it. So we're getting questions about why people have been hesitant to implement it. So we'll get to some of that as we look at the challenges. So some of the challenges of remote work that we have seen, even before we all went remote, were IT and computer issues. We had to figure out how to have online meetings with people in the office and out of the office. In OCG, we started using a system called the OWL, which has been the best microphone that we found for those meetings because it tracks the speaker and provides a nice visual of people in the room to those who are remote. Since going remote, we've already had computer issues where somebody's computer died, and they had to figure out how to get onto campus and get that hooked up back with IT. I'm onboarding 2 new employees for the first time remotely April 6th. And again, it's that IT issue of having to make sure they get their computer and can get set up with all their systems before they can start working. We have good teamwork and backup plans for our remote work. I think that's really important. You never know when something might happen, even when you're in the office. So it's important for us to have a backup plan for all of our remote workers. Our part-time employee who works on proposals, so she does a lot of deadline work. She has a backup plan set for who to contact if she is not in the office, and her supervisor is also always available. I would say one of the challenges for managers is that you definitely have to manage a little bit differently with remote work, both in the way you connect with employees and train them, and also having that backup plan and the teamwork that goes on. Let's see what other ones are here. And then something that we've seen both in our office and now going full-time remote and is also is that the connection to the office and coworkers can be is a real challenge. It's definitely a challenge. You don't have the same person-to-person interaction in the office. So you have to make a conscious effort for that connection. In OCG, we use Slack for our messaging, and we do a lot of personal stuff on there just to keep connected. It doesn't get in the way of work, but it does help us keep connected on a daily basis. And then we have the issue of busy versus slow times. And I think it's something we're really adjusting to with everyone working at home. there's some things that some staff can't do when they're not in the office. And so how do we give them work to do when they are slow? And how do you adjust the work schedules for those different peaks and valleys of work? And Ashley, I'll turn that over to you.
Great. We might do a few questions here before we move into some key considerations. I wanted to add to Alexa talking about her office using Slack to stay connected to the office. So one of the things that CSU OSP did after we all went 100% remote was we created a group chat in Teams. So we use Microsoft Teams, and we call it the OSP water cooler chat. And it's just for that random kind of, hey, how are things going? Or some funny memes that are going around right now, different things like that. But it definitely seems to be, well, it stays active, and it's very nice to feel that connection still to the office. All right, so Nicole had a question. Given the positive data with respect to work from home, why do the presenters think there's hesitancy? I would say the biggest thing that I hear is that ability to know whether or not work is getting done. And I just mimic exactly what Alexa said. I don't know that my employees are getting their work done because I'm standing next to them or because I walk into their office once or twice a day. These are not things that I do to make sure that my team members are completing their activities for the day. I know based on whether or not I'm hearing from campus, whether I'm hearing from a department research administrator, whether I'm hearing from a faculty member or a sponsor. So that's really been what I have heard is the biggest hesitancy, as well as managers who are unwilling to offer teleworking for one classification of personnel versus another. And this was something that sponsored programs actually ran into at first. When we first started considering this, we were told by our central HR that we would not be able to, or they highly discouraged us from offering this for state classified employees. And so we just tabled it for a little while until things came up, brought it up again, and so we started digging into it a little bit more. And once we were able to offer it to all of our team members, then we move forward with it. So I think that that's another one of the hesitations that I hear come up. I do think that, Nicole, this social experiment might lend itself. I have no basis for that opinion, just my opinion.
Ashley, can I add that I agree with you on the hesitancy. There's a real trust that has to be part of your culture in the office to go remote. There's a lot of adjustments. It's not an easy, hey, just go work remote if you want it to work well. It's a conscious decision that you need to plan for and get set up. So there's definitely work behind it. I think the other thing is I've heard is not all offices have a real work-life balance culture. And if they just want work turned out, it's hard to make that adjustment to seeing the value in the work from home. And again, I think it really comes back to that trust piece. And I've been asked in sessions, how do I convince my upper management to try this? And I've said, hey, see if you can try it for 6 weeks. And so that's part of my advice. And maybe the social experiment will help convince offices that of all the great reasons to do it, because you're having to do it. And especially if it's done well and you can show that the work is seamless and continuing, and you can keep a strong support for your research faculty. And then Nicole also asked for a list of institutions that offer full-time remote positions. That's a great idea. I don't know of one that's out there. I just know of some one-offs here and there that offer those.
And the other thing to consider, as if you're in a position that you're considering this for future option for people, remember that this isn't a benefit. It's earned. It's a privilege, right? And so if you have staff, for instance, that you don't feel would be successful, that usually is going to show in reviews and that sort of thing. So at CSU, our kind of minimum requirement for you to be eligible to be a telework employee is that you are at least getting the level of meeting expectations on your evaluations. If you're in a section of needing improvement or anything like that, you're just simply ineligible. That's how our office has implemented it. So it really is, you know, remembering that this is an earned privilege, not a right. So with that, I will move this over to some considerations. And that really led right into it on the second bullet point there. So basically, one of the things that we would advise people to consider is to have a policy, a plan, and an agreement. I understand that some might be looking at this as something that they'll be doing after the fact, like after the fact proposals. We're used to that, right? So it might be that you're putting together a policy, plan, and agreement after the fact in light of COVID-19. You also want to make sure that you that everybody, anyone that's utilizing telework knows what their responsibility is, what their expectations are, and then document that arrangement in writing. Again, really need to have some sort of accessibility to the documents that you'll need to perform in order to work remotely, even part-time. Having that accessibility is key. Some other additional considerations that you might have is who and what will, who will provide equipment, what will be provided, same thing with supplies. At CSU, we allow for a small amount of supplies to be taken home with the employee, things like pens, a very small amount of paper, but we very explicitly say we do not pay for ink cartridges for printers because we are nearly paperless in sponsor programs. Security of confidential work. So considering that, you know, what does your institution need? What do your employees need to have installed for getting behind the firewall? At CSU, we use Pulse Secure, and then Duo is the app that we use to do that, what is it, the dual use or the dual certification type thing. So Pulse Secure and Duo are the ones that CSU currently uses. Considering Open Records Act. So in Colorado, we have NCURA, the Colorado Open Records Act, but making sure that documents are secure and that things, understanding that things will be open, excuse me, things will still need to maintain open and available for your Open Records Acts. Consider who will pay for travel to campus, especially if you have somebody that is 100% remote work. If you're going to have them come to campus for, you know, the first 2 months for training or whatever your institution might feel is needed, who's going to pay for that? So consider those topics. What communication platform will your institution use or your office? I said earlier, CSU uses primarily Microsoft Teams. That is the one that everybody must have open and be using throughout the course of their workday. Outside of that, though, other people have different things that they're using, like Slack or what's the other, Skype, things like that. Consider your technical specs. We had somebody who was our electronic research officer, and she worked with research services, our IT, for research here at CSU, to come up with what are the necessary specs that your personal computer would need in order to run remote desktop and different things like that, which is another consideration. Are you an office that already issues laptops for your workspace, or do y'all have desktops? And so it is going to be individuals who are using their own personal computers to remote in. And then the last, well, there's lots of considerations, but the last one on this slide, workman's comp. So does workman's comp come into place if they're working from home? And the answer is, for most, if you're if you get injured during the course of you conducting your normal business that you would do, then it doesn't matter where you're doing that work. Workman's comp would cover it. However, if you have people who are working in other states, you may not have reciprocal workman's compensation, as a colleague of ours has recently figured out. I definitely looked into it and reached out to our risk management and asked about whether or not CSU offers reciprocal workman's comp in all 50 states. And the answer I got was it can be done. But every state, every institution is going to have something different. So you'll need to look into that as well. Some of the technical specs that you might need to also consider is phones. Are you going to expect that your employees put out their personal cell phones, or does your institution have an option for forwarding your cell phones? At CSU, we have an option for forwarding cell phones, although it was always limited to a local line until recently. They've turned that off only in light of COVID-19 and the amount of employees that are working remotely at the time. But coming up with solutions around it. CSU did it. You can get a Google Voice for free, and you can get a local number if you're someone like me who isn't born and raised. I'm not a Colorado native. So my area code was different and it wasn't working. But because I had a free Google Voice that I tied to my personal cell phone, I was able to call forward from work. So there are some little things that you kind of need to work out, and happy to share some of the tips and tricks from CSU, and I'm sure Alexa would from CU Boulder as well. So the other, oh, go ahead.
Ashley.
Mm-hmm.
He says, wondering if a supplied computer or phone causes damage to a house, is that covered? That's like
causes damage to a house. That would be a question I would have to ask our risk management for sure. I don't. Yeah. I don't know, like faulty wiring or something. I'm not really sure. Yeah, I would definitely say that that might fall under homeowners, or it might be something that would need to be discussed for that type of situation with your university's risk management. Great question though. So additional considerations, human resources or your institutional allowability and buy-in, and then some state regulations. See if you are a state institution and your state has certain regulations, you may need to consider some of those as well. So I'm just going to show y'all a few of what CSU has done for our telework. So this is part of our agreement that we have in place with each employee. So the first like 10, 12 pages are just talking about expectations and that sort of thing. But then we have sort of the forms to fill out and document what the employee's telework schedule will look like. We definitely borrowed this from either University of Maryland or from University of Colorado Boulder. I'm not sure which one. We borrowed most of our stuff from either one of those institutions and tweaked it for CSU, which is what we hope that all of you on the line will do, not recreate the wheel, but utilize what we have and tweak it for your institution. But here we just kind of put in whether or not they're going to be working remote or if they're going to be on campus with us. This is also our self-certification checklist. So we kind of line out and have them self-certify what are the expectations of what your workspace environment needs to be to accommodate you working remotely. So free from hazards, do you have electrical outlets, phone lines, different things like that. Is there enough lighting? That is certainly one that I feel like I'm struggling with a little bit. I think I get a lot of brightness from my screen and that's about it. Distractions, I don't think that we are free of distractions right now, any of us, but normally, hopefully you would be free of distractions in your remote workspace. This goes on to go into technical requirements. You see that we have Exhibit A as part of our agreement that lists out our technical requirements. And then whether or not you have been acquainted, have you had a discussion with your supervisor about the expectations, were you provided a copy of the agreement and so forth. So these are just some examples, some little screenshots that I just wanted to show you all about how we sort of put this in place and what our documented in writing of the work arrangement is.
I'm up.
Alexa?
And I'll add that CU's policy and our forms are online, and they're also on the link is on the resource page of the slide deck, so you can have those. So yeah, so you can look at those as well. So I'm going to talk about briefly after implementation. So some of the things that you might come across after you implement either regular work policy or even right now going full-time remote with your whole staff. So of course, be ready for the unexpected. We've had to adjust for the emergency of, we're actually under a Colorado stay-at-home order now, so we're all at home. But also emergencies like if someone's, has to go take care of a sick spouse or computers die or anything like that. Be ready for those. When you do have a remote policy, you're setting a precedence for all the employees in your department. And at CU, it started to set a precedence for the entire campus. Our campus doesn't have a policy campus-wide, so it's department by department. But word of what we're doing has gotten out, and so we're starting to set that precedent for other departments as well to look at whether they can adapt flexible work arrangements. I mentioned isolation before, so you really have to be careful that you're consciously connecting your remote staff. Especially now with the virus and everything going on, people are stressed, there's distractions. So we need to find ways to connect with each other and make sure we can still get the work done. Carefully communicate any policy changes. So if you do make changes in your policy, which we did this year, the communication of how you put that out is really important. And if it's not done right, or carefully, it can actually break some trust with your employees. So we're, part of the remote policy is that we have trust with our employees, and how you communicate changes is really important in maintaining that trust with them. I want to mention here too that working remote is something that we found is a real mind shift from being in the seat to getting that work done. And especially now, the more flexibility we can offer employees with everything going on, the better. And so our office right now is, you work when you can. I've got 3 kids at home. Next week I'm transitioning to figuring out how to school them at home. So we've gotten lots of flexibility there right now. It's not about being in your seat, but it's about getting the work done and making sure we're still supporting research on campus. There is definitely a steep learning curve to going full-time remote. We have never onboarded employees who haven't worked in our office who are now full-time remote. We've never trained people who are new to our office. So that is a steep learning curve for us. There are lots of resources out there to help with making training better. I recommend looking at them for sure, because there are some little tips in there that can really help you out. And then finally, remember to take breaks at home is really important. So encourage staff to take breaks. I have an Apple Watch with circles on it, and I almost never complete the stand circle if I'm not consciously making sure I stand up when I'm working at home. It's just easy to get sucked into that work. And the last point there is that you really have to trust your employees. So give them this great benefit and the trust that they can get the work done. And now we've got about a little over 15 minutes to go for open discussion.
So we had a comment that came up about, you just had it, you said, can you share it with the whole group? It was about negotiating with people that are coming in new. Diane was able to respond on behalf of CSU that you guys haven't fully worked out the kinks of negotiating remote schedules. I think at CU, we have this policy where you're in for a year, and then after you've been with the university for a year, even if you're transferring from another unit, you can possibly do a day or 2 days if that's what you previously had. So there is some negotiation there for our campus. Other people that want to discuss that one or want to share what their institute does, feel free to unmute yourself.
I will add, and hopefully he won't mind, and I'm guessing not since he did the national. webinar with Alexa and I last week is that Dennis Pathrath from University of Maryland, I mix that up every time. Anyway, he actually does, and he just recently went through posting his first position where he would accept anyone from another state. And that was actually where he found out that there were some challenges with the workman's comp and the it being reciprocal between different states and that sort of thing. So if that is something that, you know, you're looking for more information about, Dennis might be a great resource to reach out to on that. Don't tell him I sent you. I'm just kidding.
I know that Stanford's another university that offers full-time remote. One of our staff members actually ran into a Stanford employee from Kentucky who was on campus for training or checking in with her office. So they're another campus that offers that full-time remote possibility. Let's see, what else?
Trisha, were you raising your hand or yelling at a child? Trisha Sothergill.
Oh.
So Vicki brought up one of the topics we were going to potentially open up today. She said, one thing I've noticed is that I forget to eat breakfast or lunch. What are the struggles that you guys are facing and you want to talk about? We're here to listen.
I can't believe that nobody is running into challenges.
Maybe we should ask the veteran question first, all of the things we've learned and want to share.
So I could share a challenge.
Great.
Yes.
Jenny Harding at CSU. My challenge is being able to turn it off. It's really easy to just keep going. Oh, I'm not making dinner till 6:30. I'll just do a little more. So that's kind of what I've been running into is being able to stop.
That's absolutely a challenge, not getting up and walking around like you would when you're in the office and not stopping. I have definitely struggled with that myself. Any tips and tricks out there on how to turn it off? Maybe have some siren alarm that goes off at 5 o'clock or something that says stop it.
You have a 9-year-old who wants to play Monopoly. They work really well. It's my commute where it was like a transition time from work to home. Right now you're like work home. There's no transition time there, which is a struggle. Maybe we encourage each other in our own offices to sign off. That can be helpful.
I'm finding that 4 dogs is a great help.
I find being down in my basement and being so freezing because it's just freezing down here helps me walk away. Less so when I decide to go and sit out on my back deck and then I realize that it's 6 o'clock and I'm still doing emails. But yeah, maybe don't make yourself so comfortable.
Another one came up, Sarah Montgomery. She talked about working at home with another person there, having to share that space with video and phone. I'm sure a lot of us are having to figure that out right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like Steven's recommendation too. Don't just close it, shut it down. That's a big one for me too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been my husband works at home a lot of the time and he'd already been doing that. So, and I invaded his space. So we had to do some negotiating as far as who goes where. We actually set up an extra spot for one of us to work at yesterday. So yeah, that is, and I communicate with my family too. Like today I said, I'm absolutely unavailable between 11:30 and 1 o'clock today. Sometimes you can interrupt me, but during this time I can't be interrupted. So that communication with each other as far as schedule is really important.
Oh, someone brought up that they purposely make time. It does help if you have a dog that makes you go outside. But today, especially before snow hits, I would like to challenge everyone to get outdoors, enjoy it.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, let me go ahead. If there isn't any other open discussion that folks are wanting to have, I'll just kind of go through, show you guys a few of our resource slides. So I did break this up. There's about 3 slides of resources. So these all have links. This includes Alexa's office's, what do you call it? Their agreement and some of the other research that we've quoted today. So these are available to you all. Like I said, there's about 3 slides of resources here. And anyways, then if you have any questions about the presentation, if you want to reach out and actually get a copy of CSU's as well, feel free. My email is here. Alexa's email is on here as well. Do feel free to reach out to us. We will be making the presentation today available on the Region 7 PEDC website. So you will be able to go in and take a look or share this with others if needed. And then our very last slide is just appreciating your feedback. We are definitely just starting these webinar offerings through the PEDC for Region 7. So if you can provide us your feedback on today's presentation, we would greatly appreciate that. Part of that is also letting us know if you have a topic for the next one. We want to hear from our region to hear what is valuable to you right now. And our PEDC committee is really working quickly to try and get hot topics out to the region as soon as we can. So thank you all again for showing up today and for everybody's comments and feedback. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you all so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, take care everybody. Stay well, be safe.
It looks like there was a question that came in to a private channel. In our last 8 minutes, I'm just gonna share with a small group if we want to get to it. In case this person's still on. Their supervisor sent out an email last week saying that everyone has to be on an 8 to 5 schedule during COVID telecommuting. So that's a difficult situation. And they were anticipating more flexibility, not less. So they're wondering if any other units or institutions have done alternate schedules. I know ours at CU has. Danita was on the call earlier. She's very vocal about work-life balance and encouraging our employees to do, like, the work will get done and we trust each other and we know what our commitments are. But want to address this 8 to 5 strict schedule.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Sarah, I'm with you. I would think that there would be a little bit more flexibility during this time.
And I would, if anyone's in a leadership position to make that decision, I would err on the side of flexibility. It's a good way to respond to crisis and give your staff the time they need to take care of things so they can focus on work. I mean, it's really hard for me to think about next week I've got to start schooling and I got to work. So I've got to, I need some flexibility in there to figure that out on Monday and Tuesday when we're first starting that. So I think it eases off some stress if you can provide that flexibility because you have just the time is not also a pressure. I'm also, if we have, if we can, there's some really good, I think thinking two webinars I recently attended that will help leaders in this transition and also for onboarding, but training. But there's 2 great webinars out there that I'd like to provide links to as well. So I can add those.
Oh, great.
Yeah, because that design is I think is important to help keep people when they start in this environment.
So we'll add those to the slides that I'll post on the website or into the resources section.
How long is CSU on for the remoting in. And I guess I don't understand the question. How long is CSU on for the remoting in? We've been doing this for about 1.5 years. Is that the question that's being asked?
Or maybe do you guys have a date as far as when you can go back into the office? I know
Oh, we don't have a date yet of when we're going back in. Yeah, it's TBD.
in Colorado, we are stay at home until April 11th right now, which is a change. So that's right now. We know that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Can we post the Qualtrics survey into the chat?
April 10th. Oh, sure. I think I can do that. Or I can spaz out my computer. Let me stop sharing here. Let me find. Trisha, do you have the Qualtrics? Seriously, like
I'm
my
getting it
computer
right
just went
now.
black.
Yep, I'm trying to pull it up right now. Oh, please.
There we go.
Oh, did you get it?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, thank you. It's okay.
It seriously was just, wow. Okay. All right. I'll get that in there. Great. All right. Well, much smaller group, but if
Okay.
anybody has any last minute questions, feel free to chime in.
It was really excellent information. Thank you both for sharing.
Happy to. All right. Well, thanks again, everybody. Take care.
Yes, please do a survey. Thank you all for coming. We'll see you next time.